I did know that he had a certain amount of notoriety, that other, he was kind of famous in the area. And that was kind of cool as a kid, to see articles in the Winchester Star about your dad and have people think of him as a local celebrity, even though to us he was dad, which means early on when we were living in Middletown, he was in the house. The studio was upstairs. And then later on, he was in a studio either on top of the next hill or down the valley. So he was around a lot. Even the ones he planned out started as an encounter. I don't think, like for example, he'd drive around and find a farm that looked like, the buildings were interesting and a pond and whatnot. And at that point, he had no plan. He would go talk to the owner and say, hey, can I walk around and do some sketching or whatnot? And he'd walk around and if he found something that he liked that led to a painting, it's kind of an encounter. During cold time of year, he had a vehicle that we called the Flivver. It was a 1974 Plymouth Trailblazer 4x4, and he'd fitted it out to paint from, which means it had a permanent metal awning all the way around the top, stuck out probably 16 inches to keep water off the windows. If it was raining or snowing, you wouldn't be able to see out. He had a propane heater in it, and he had rigged up a storage compartment up over your head in the back where you could put paper and drawing boards and things like that.
This kind of tempera is all underpainting. It's very indirect, little hashings. You have to have patience, and you have to know what you want it to look like, because in the early stages, it doesn't look like it's going right. You have to know where you're going. You have to have lots of patience and a lot of skill. And he mixed his own paints, which was kind of arduous because you had to mix them often.
Other times he would take an umbrella, because you kind of need to not be in full sun when you're painting for several reasons. Paint dries too fast, and also the light is a very different color, full sunlight, than shaded light.
I feel like we grew up in Camelot, like we were in a bubble. It was fabulous. We enjoyed each other. We played. Mom and Dad had a wonderful relationship, and that extended to us.
Posing for Dad, the actual technical process was usually he would put you where you were going to be in the situation, not in a studio, but out wherever you were. And he would start with pencil and paper and work quickly. And as kids, when we're little, it's like a 5-minute pose, maybe a 10-minute pose, if it was a comfortable place to sit. But even a comfortable place to sit, your nose immediately starts to itch. And nothing is as comfortable as you think it is. Often later on, especially if he's going to do a tempera painting from the watercolor, he might have you set up in the studio as well and do some drawing and painting. The drawing he's got from before, but usually he might have you pose in the studio to work on the painting.
To me, it was an important job. I loved my dad, and I loved doing whatever he needed me to do and pitching in and helping. And so it was always pretty easy for me to pose. I actually started posing for him when I was 4, and I probably had done 6 or 7 paintings by the time I was 6, or maybe 7. And so I was a trooper.
There are more of me as a teenager and a 20-something because I lived at home longer than anybody. I was there. So during that period of time, I was the one that was available. That's one reason. 2, and you can see this in some of the paintings, where I'm shirtless. I had long, thin arms and legs, but good muscle, definition. So when the light was on me, it was interesting in that way. And also, I kind of was into it. And like I said, I lured him, and I probably did that more than once, into doing a painting. Other times you'd see him doing this and you'd leave the room if you didn't want to pose. But usually by this time it was too late.
I always wanted to do whatever they did. So, of course I was going to pose. He had me posing on my stomach on rocks once. And that wasn't real comfortable, but I could do it. And that, I guess, a point of pride. Maybe that's because I'm the youngest, that I could do it.
I'm sure he saw me running around the streets as like other kids at that age. I've grown to love that kid in the painting because of who he is and who he's grown to be. And every day when I look at that painting in the dining room, or the print rather, you know, I'm thinking, you were really a good kid then. You were innocent. You really were. And he captured your innocence in that picture.
There were nice distractions when we were outside. There are always butterflies to chase or things to look at. But there were also sweat bees, and it was hot, and the grass was itchy. I probably liked posing in the studio better. It was quiet and peaceful, and whenever I wasn't posing and Dad was working, I would go watch him paint or draw or whatever.
He would put the tape around your feet or make a mark where you were so you could get back in it. Then, you know, he lower your chin, look this way, that way, until he got you, and then he'd say, focus on what it is so you can get back in your pose. And then he would help you get back in the pose. He would say, don't move. And you really, a lot of times you wanted to run because you knew you were in for it. I think he was always looking. I think we were all always looking. We were grown up to look. The light, huge. The light on certain things, the weather, always looking, always having in mind beautiful things.
Over time, these paintings, many of the paintings we still own, have just been in the background of our lives for so long. You go through long periods of time where you don't think about them. You don't look at them. They're just there. Then all of a sudden you'll discover something in one of them and you start looking at them again. And they're truly amazing, but it's not always something that I think about.
If you look at what he was doing in the time frame he was doing it in the 20th century, you're going to find that he was unique and that he really was kind of counted in with the big boys, if you will, that a lot of people would recognize the names because there was only a handful of people doing the tempera like he did, and really the realism like he did.
Unlike a lot of contemporary realistic artists, a lot of people seem to like to paint kind of the edges between what's the result of human activity and where the woods are now encroaching on it, the fallen down fence and whatever. He did some of that, but mostly he was more interested in the people who are actually still doing things in the farms and fields, not so much where the old truck is rusting out that had been active some years ago.
I always was amazed by his paintings, but I think as an adult, especially as an artist and someone who's studied art and looked closely at other people's paintings, there's a timelessness to it that I wouldn't have thought of as a child.
He was a very caring gentleman to me. He treated me with a great deal of respect. Made me feel comfortable. He made it fun. I enjoyed the moments with him. That's why my experience of it, the length of time, it seemed longer than a short while. I think often about what it means. It has some meaning to me. I see a young lad there with his PF flowers on, his dungy jeans and his favorite red shirt, and I think he's just pondering as to what's next. What can I get into next? And I just brought the wood in, It's on the porch ready to be used. What do I get into next?